Let's be honest, there's something inside your mind that's been sabotaging you, and you know it. But what you may not have realized yet is that it's not just one thing, it's several. They're small, silent, invisible poisons you've been carrying for so long that you've started to believe they're part of who you are. But they're not. You weren't born anxious, frustrated, or afraid. You absorbed those things, drop by drop, and that's exactly what we need to talk about now. Because while you're trying to fix your life from the outside, the root of the problem keeps growing on the inside. Stoic philosophy, born more than 2,000 years ago, already had the answer to this. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, knew that true freedom doesn't come from changing the world around you, but from purifying your inner world. They called this the mastery of reason, peace of soul, silent courage. And maybe, now more than ever, this ancient wisdom is exactly what you need to regain the clarity you lost along the way. You're about to uncover the 10 mental poisons that have been draining your energy, your focus, and your peace without you even noticing. And most importantly, I'll show you how to eliminate them in silence, just like a true Stoic would. No drama, no explanations, no noise, because sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is to be quiet and let go. And I ask you for one thing: stay until the end, because the last poison is the one almost no one recognizes, but it's the one that most keeps people from being truly happy. If you leave early, you might keep carrying what's already ready to be left behind. Let's begin. The obsession with pleasing everyone. Have you ever caught yourself saying yes when everything inside you was screaming no? Have you ever felt that strange heaviness after agreeing to something you didn't want just to avoid disappointing someone? This is one of the most deceptive mental poisons, the obsession with pleasing others. And the most dangerous part is that it doesn't show up loudly. It settles in slowly, disguised as kindness, empathy, good manners. But deep down, it robs you. It drains you. If you live to please others, you die a little inside every day. And that's exactly what so many of us are doing, living false versions of ourselves, afraid of being rejected, criticized, or misunderstood. Stoic philosophy speaks directly to this. The Stoics believe that freedom begins the moment you free yourself from the opinions of others. Epictetus said, "Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead want them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." So what does that have to do with pleasing others? Everything, because the more you try to control how people see you, the further you drift from who you truly are. And worse, the more emotionally fragile you become. After all, your peace ends up in someone else's hands. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it plainly: it is madness to want to please everyone. Live according to your nature. The truth is harsh but necessary. The more you try to please everyone, the less you please yourself. And when you stop pleasing yourself, you lose yourself. When you lose yourself, you break apart, and a fragmented mind becomes fertile ground for the next 9 poisons that follow. That's why eliminating this quiet obsession must be the first step. Start small. Say no when you need to. Allow yourself to be misunderstood from time to time. Respect your intuition. You don't owe loyalty to a false image of yourself. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the only things that truly belong to us are our minds and our choices. Protect them fiercely. In the next section, we'll talk about an even deeper, more invisible poison, the attachment to what you can't control. Because while we try to please the world, we also try to control it, and that illusion is even more destructive. Attachment to what you can't control. Have you ever noticed how much of your life is spent trying to control the uncontrollable? Other people's reactions, the weather, someone's behavior, the outcome of something that hasn't even happened yet. This is another subtle mental poison, obsessive attachment to what is beyond your reach. And the more you try to hold on, the more it slips through your fingers. That's not control. It's suffering disguised as effort. Stoic philosophy has a central principle that seems simple but is deeply transformative. There are things that depend on you and things that don't. Epictetus made this clear when he said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." And the tragedy is that most people live the exact opposite, spending their energy trying to control others, the future, acceptance, and circumstances, while neglecting the one thing they actually have power over, themselves. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. It may sound like a cliche, but this metaphor captures the essence of Stoic thinking. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Accept calmly whatever cannot be changed. because the real burden isn't in the events themselves, but in the resistance we create toward them. The more you fight reality, the more it crushes you. Attachment to control is a golden prison. It makes you feel like you're in charge, but you're actually chained. Chained to anxiety, to fear, to constant frustration. It's like trying to sail with an overloaded boat. Everything you pile on in your attempt to control things just weighs you down, and in the end, you sink. Letting go of control isn't giving up, it's trusting. Trusting that you can act with excellence, even without guarantees. That you can respond with wisdom, even when everything around you falls apart. That's pure Stoicism. Act where you can, accept where you can't. This mental poison must be eliminated in silence, with consistency. Every time anxiety hits, ask yourself, does this depend on me? If it doesn't, let it go. Breathe. Live. In the next section, we'll dive into a poison that hides within emotional neediness, the craving for constant validation. Because if you don't learn to live with yourself, you'll live enslaved to the applause of others. If this video is starting to make sense to you, if it's touched something inside, give back with a simple gesture. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. You might not realize it now, but that small action helps this message reach others who are also carrying these poisons in silence. That's how we start changing the world, one mind at a time, silently, together. Before we move on, if this content is already making you reflect, give back with a simple act. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. That shows this type of message resonates with you, and it motivates us to keep sharing these deep teachings from Stoic philosophy. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos, because what's coming might be exactly what you need to shift your mindset, find more clarity, and live with greater purpose. Don't postpone your growth. Start now with one click. The need for constant validation. Why do you feel such a strong need to be seen, praised, accepted? The silence of a like that never came. The discomfort of a message seen but unanswered. The emptiness that forms when no one notices your effort. This is one of the subtlest and most destructive mental poisons. The need for constant validation. It's like walking on mirrors. Fragile, sharp, dangerous. Stoic philosophy teaches us to seek the hardest approval of all, our own. Epictetus once warned, if you want to be invincible, don't fight for things that don't depend on you, and other people's judgment is never in your control. The applause you're waiting for, the compliments you crave, the acceptance you long for, they're shadows, and living for them is living in darkness. External approval is like applause in the distance. It never truly fills you. You can get 1,000 likes and still feel empty. You can please everyone and still look in the mirror at the end of the day and not recognize yourself. Because when you depend on someone else's gaze to feel real, you become a reflection, never a presence. Marcus Aurelius, in his Stoic Clarity, wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not on the number of compliments, not on social acceptance, but on the quiet peace of knowing you are aligned with your principles, that alone." The problem with validation is that it becomes addictive, and the more you receive, the more you need. It's like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become, and the cycle never ends. The only way out is to free yourself, slowly, silently, with resolve. True validation is born from the alignment between what you think, feel, and do. When you live with integrity, you don't need applause. You are enough. That's the state the Stoics called self-sufficiency, a mind at peace, one that doesn't depend on external noise to feel alive. And if you truly want to start living with lightness, you need to eliminate this poison, because as long as you're hungry for approval, you'll be vulnerable to rejection. In the next section, we'll expose one of the most silent and self-sabotaging poisons, the destructive inner dialogue, because sometimes the enemy isn't out there. It's the voice you keep repeating inside yourself. If this video is resonating with you, I have a simple but powerful invitation. Write the word Stoic in the comments. It's not just a word, it's a silent symbol that you've chosen to begin your transformation from within, just like the Stoics did. Marcus Aurelius said, "What's not good for the hive is not good for the bee." By commenting, you reinforce your own commitment to lightness and mental clarity, and you help this video reach others who need it too. Someone out there might be going through exactly what you've been through, and your quiet gesture might be the beginning of their change. Comment Stoic. Your silence may inspire more than 1,000 words. The destructive inner dialogue. What if I told you that the person who criticizes you the most, limits you the most, and sabotages you the most is yourself? Sometimes it's not the world that brings you down, it's your own inner voice, the one that says, you're not good enough, you're going to fail again, this isn't for you. This is a devastating mental poison, the destructive inner dialogue. And the most dangerous part? It's so constant that you don't even realize you've been poisoned. The Stoics were fully aware of the power of the mind. Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. In other words, the way you talk to yourself either builds or destroys your reality. The world may be at peace, but if your mind is a battlefield, you'll never find rest. Negative self-talk doesn't begin with a shout. It begins with a whisper, a doubt, a quiet, what if it goes wrong? And slowly, this poison takes root. You start believing you don't deserve it, that you're not capable, that you're always behind everyone else. And so, you begin shrinking in silence, not even realizing how much you've held yourself back. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That means the way you treat yourself is your responsibility. You can't control what others say to you, but you can control what you repeat to yourself. And that's where Stoicism shines. It invites us to take charge of our inner world, to cultivate thoughts aligned with reason, peace, and virtue. It takes courage to silence the voice that tears you down, courage to replace judgment with compassion, courage to look in the mirror and say, I am enough, even as a work in progress. Eliminating this poison doesn't mean becoming arrogant or blind to your flaws. It means changing the tone of your inner dialogue, speaking to yourself like a mentor, not an executioner, correcting with firmness, but loving with consistency. In the next section, we'll talk about one of the most widespread and dangerous modern poisons, addiction to digital distractions. Because even when we manage to silence the mind, the world keeps shouting. And learning how to deal with that is part of the Stoic path. Addiction to digital distractions. Have you noticed how your mind jumps from one notification to another without even realizing it? You wake up, unlock your phone out of habit, and before you know it, 30 minutes have passed. It may seem harmless, but it hides one of the most dangerous mental poisons of the modern era, addiction to digital distractions. It's not just about losing time, it's about losing focus, presence, and depth. The Stoics never had to deal with social media, but they understood something that applies perfectly to our times. The mind needs silence in order to flourish. Seneca wrote, life is not short. We make it short by wasting it. And what have we done more today than waste our time on empty stimuli, chasing instant rewards that never truly fulfill us? Every aimless scroll is a small act of self-abandonment. It's as if the mind slowly numbs itself, losing the ability to contemplate, to reflect, to simply exist without the need to consume something. This constant distraction prevents us from thinking. And when you don't think, you live on autopilot, the opposite of the full awareness the Stoics advocated. Epictetus warned, the free man is the one who lives according to reason, not according to passion. And today, passions show up as clicks, likes, notifications. The digital world has become a subtle trap. It feels like we're connected, but we're actually becoming more and more disconnected from ourselves. Eliminating this poison doesn't mean disappearing from the world. It means relearning how to dwell in silence, turning off notifications, choosing moments of digital absence, creating space to be alone with your own thoughts, without fear, without escape. That's modern Stoic practice, mental discipline in a world that profits from your distraction. Because in the end, constant distraction doesn't just pull you away from productivity, it pulls you away from truth. And when you live far from truth, everything that follows becomes tainted, including the next poison, one that feeds off this lack of presence, the quiet comparison with others. Because when you're not connected to yourself, it's easy to get lost in who others appear to be. The silent comparison with others. How many times have you felt good until you saw someone better, a more sculpted body, a more perfect life, a level of success that feels unreachable? You don't talk about it, no one notices, but inside, something breaks. That's comparison, silent, constant, corrosive, one of the most common and normalized mental poisons, and also one of the most lethal. The Stoics warned us long ago, the value of your life cannot be measured by what's outside of you. Marcus Aurelius was clear when he said, Don't waste time debating what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, stop looking outward for validation and start acting from your own essence. But this shift requires vigilance because comparison is easy, automatic, cultural. The trap is everywhere, especially today. Comparison starts with a glance, but ends with your sense of self in ruins. You stop appreciating your achievements. You downplay your growth. You forget where you came from and begin running an invisible race where the prize isn't yours, the path isn't yours, and the finish line doesn't even exist. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be seen as ignorant or foolish. In other words, accept being in your own time, your own phase, your own process, because haste is born from comparison, and comparison from fear. Fear of not being enough, of not measuring up, but enough for whom? Measuring up to what? The poison of comparison robs you of gratitude, and without gratitude, there is no peace. Stoic philosophy invites us to look inward, not sideways, to seek excellence, not superiority, because it's not about beating others, it's about overcoming yourself every single day. Eliminating this poison is a daily exercise in self-awareness, a practice of constantly reminding yourself that the only real reference is who you were yesterday, and the only healthy comparison is with your own progress. And it's often because we compare ourselves so much that without realizing it, we begin to carry another hidden and heavy poison. Guilt over the past, the things that are behind you but still hold you back. And that's what we'll talk about next. The guilt you carry from the past. Have you noticed how certain past mistakes still weigh on your chest, even if no one else talks about them anymore? You can move on with your life, grow, change, build a new version of yourself, but deep down, something still holds you back. The memory of what wasn't, of what should have been, of what you wish you could undo. This is a silent, corrosive, persistent poison, guilt from the past. Stoic philosophy is clear about this. The past is no longer within your control. What's done is done. What matters is what you do now. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The past and future have no power over you. The present is all you own." But even knowing this, many still live trapped in cycles of self-condemnation. Guilt doesn't repair. Guilt doesn't transform. Guilt only paralyzes. It's like dragging invisible chains wherever you go. You try to smile, to move forward, to build something new, but the weight pulls you back. And the worst part? You get used to carrying that burden, as if it were a part of who you are. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that includes what has already happened. You can't change the past, but you can change the meaning you give to it. You can turn guilt into a lesson, mistakes into wisdom, pain into a solid foundation. The hardest forgiveness is the one you owe yourself, and it's also the most freeing, because as long as you don't forgive yourself, you continue punishing yourself in silence, sabotaging your own progress, believing you don't deserve to move forward, as if you were paying off an emotional debt with endless interest. Eliminating this mental poison doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means recognizing it, facing it, and letting it go. It means looking at your mistakes with maturity and saying, "I've learned, I've grown, and now I move forward." In the next section, we'll explore a poison that walks hand in hand with guilt, the paralyzing fear of judgment, because often it's not the past that holds us back. It's the fear of how others still see us because of it. The paralyzing fear of judgment. How many times have you held back from being yourself just because you were afraid of what others might think? That idea you didn't share, that outfit you didn't wear, that decision you avoided, all to dodge glances, criticism, interpretations. This is a paralyzing mental poison, the fear of judgment. And the cruelest part is that it limits you without anyone needing to say a word. You censor yourself. The Stoics saw this fear as a self-imposed prison. Seneca stated firmly, "Concern for what others think is a form of slavery." When you hand over your freedom to someone else's gaze, you lose control over your own existence. You start shaping your life based on external expectations instead of internal values. The fear of judgment is a constant noise inside your head, and the more you listen to it, the less you hear your own intuition. You start living just to fit in, to be accepted, to mold yourself into something that was never truly yours. And little by little, day after day, you drift further from who you really are until you can't even remember. Marcus Aurelius guided by Stoic clarity, even in his most difficult moments, wrote, "It is ridiculous to run from the opinions of others, but not to run from your own degradation." In other words, we fear outside criticism so much that we ignore the internal voice crying out for authenticity. Freedom begins the moment you accept not being understood. When you realize you don't need to prove anything, no explanations, no justifications. When you quiet the noise of social expectation and begin to act in alignment with what truly matters, your principles. Eliminating this poison is a process. It takes discomfort. It takes courage. It takes being willing to be yourself, even when that means losing applause or pleasing fewer people. But the reward is immense: peace, wholeness, alignment. And only when you overcome this fear do you realize something deeper. Much of what you try to control comes from this very insecurity. In the next section, we'll talk about a poison that hides behind anxiety and rigidity. The belief that you need to be in control all the time. Because the urge to control everything is often just fear in disguise. The belief that you need to be in control all the time. Have you ever felt drained from constantly trying to predict, organize, and manage everything around you? As if, unless you're in control, something is bound to go wrong. This is one of the most exhausting mental poisons, disguised as responsibility, the belief that you need to be in control at all times. But the truth is simple and brutal. You don't have that power, and clinging to this illusion only takes you further from serenity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught, the key to tranquility is to distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. Yet most of us spend our days trying to control what others think, what might happen tomorrow, or how the world should behave. This need for control is born from fear. Fear of pain, fear of the unexpected, fear of failure. So you try to predict everything, calculate every move, plan every detail. But life doesn't follow your spreadsheets. Life happens, it shifts, and the more you try to force it into your mold, the more you suffer. Marcus Aurelius reflected with wisdom, accept whatever comes to you, woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs. This doesn't mean passivity. It means a deep understanding that there's a greater order beyond your will, and that your peace comes from surrender, not from rigidity. Trying to control everything is like carrying a backpack full of stones that don't belong to you. You feel the weight, but you don't know why. Life becomes a constant effort, an emotional drain with no break, until one day you realize maybe what's exhausting you isn't what's happening. It's your constant effort to control what was never yours to control. Eliminating this poison requires daily practice in trust, trusting that you can act with clarity, even without certainty, that you can move forward without needing to dominate the entire path. This is the true strength the Stoics taught, to act with excellence where it matters, and to accept with wisdom where it doesn't. And it's often in this desperate effort to keep everything under control that another silent poison takes root, perhaps the most deceptive of them all. The belief that you'll only be happy when everything is perfect. And that's the final poison we'll talk about next. The belief that you'll only be happy when everything is perfect. How many times have you postponed your peace, waiting for the perfect moment, when you finish that project, when you have more money, when you're recognized, when you heal, when you move to another city? You keep stacking up whens, as if life is always one step away from finally being good enough. This is one of the most dangerous mental poisons, the belief that happiness will only come when everything is perfect. The problem is that perfect doesn't exist, or worse, when it finally arrives, it's already been replaced by another goal, another ideal, another pressure, and so happiness becomes a mirage. The more you chase it, the further it drifts away. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Seneca said, "While we are waiting to live, life passes us by." In other words, waiting for life to align before you start living is the same as never living at all. This obsession with the ideal keeps you from seeing the value of the present. You feel like you're not enough, not because something is truly missing, but because you're stuck comparing yourself to an imaginary, unattainable standard. And the more you measure your reality against that impossible ideal, the more frustrated, anxious, and unhappy you become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not your circumstances, not the setting, not the absence of problems, but your ability to see value in what already is." Real life happens in the imperfections, in the ordinary days, in the quiet, in the small steps forward. And when you reject that, you're rejecting life itself. Eliminating this poison means making peace with the present, accepting that you can be in motion and at peace at the same time, that you can pursue growth without tying your joy to it, that you can be happy even while you're still becoming. The Stoics remind us what we have is the present. This is where action, clarity, and power live. And while you're waiting for something greater, you might be letting the most valuable parts of life slip by. Now that you know the 10 mental poisons, the power to begin eliminating them one by one, silently and with courage, is in your hands. If this video touched you in any way, if it brought you clarity, relief, or even a small awakening, write in the comments, "In silence lies the answer." I want to know how this message resonated with you, and if this helped you, give back by supporting this message. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Your support isn't just important, it's what allows us to keep creating content that transforms lives from the inside out, in silence. Did you notice? At no point did I tell you to change the world, because the Stoics already taught us that the real revolution doesn't happen on the outside, it happens within. You can keep trying to fix circumstances, adjust other people, wait for the perfect moment, or you can begin right now, in silence, letting go of what's been poisoning you from the inside. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We waste our time waiting for life, but life is happening now." And maybe what steals your time the most isn't distractions, it's the invisible poisons you feed every single day. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't have to get rid of everything at once. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection. It calls for clarity, presence, and strength in the face of what truly matters. Eliminate one poison at a time, in silence, without announcements, without noise. Every thought you release, every attachment you question, every mental pattern you replace is a silent victory, and none of them are small. Now, I want to leave you with a question, one that could change your life if you have the courage to answer it honestly. Which of these poisons are you already ready to release, but haven't yet found the courage to let go? Think carefully, and if you feel like it, share your answer in the comments. You might discover that the simple act of writing what needs to be released is already the beginning of your liberation. Stoic philosophy lives on not because it's written in books, but because it echoes in those who have the courage to practice what they believe. If you've made it this far, you've already begun. Now all that's left is to keep going. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the things no one ever told you, but that could change everything.